Hello! Hello, my fellow Americans and people from S-hole countries. Um, we are going to be doing the chapter intros for all the chapters of the Anarchist audiobook. I'm also doing the introduction, and I'm going to do 2 takes of the Ling chapter. I'm going to do one cold-blooded, and then one where he's losing his mind, and then people at malice.locals.com can tell me which version they like better. My favorite producer, Frank, is here helping us out. We're here at the Gas Digital Studios, and we'll have time for super chats, I guess, in between some of these chapter breaks. But this is going to be everyone's chance to see who read which chapter for the book, and I'm very, very excited about that because I really hit the Rolodex, and people did a great job, and it mirrored the effect that I wanted of being lazy, but also that these are many different voices and they have different perspectives. So it's perfectly appropriate that the audiobook would literally have many different voices to display the concept that the black flag comes in many colors. I really like that quote. I'm very proud of myself for that quote. So we're gonna. I think we should do. I don't know if I should do the chapter intros first or the intro first. I'm gonna do the intro first. We're gonna do it chronologically. So we're recording. This is professional studio, so we can do as many takes as we want. So the Anarchist audiobook, organized by Michael Malice. What started the craze to kill was a lecture I heard some little time ago by Emma Goldman. She was in Cleveland, and I and other anarchists went to hear her. She set me on fire. Her doctrine that all rulers should be exterminated was what set me to thinking so that my head nearly split with the pain. Miss Goldman's words went right through me, and when I left the lecture, I had made up my mind that I would have to do something heroic for the cause I loved. Leon Salgaz. Chapter 1. Hoch die Anarchie. When I was in college, I took a bioethics course. Within the first couple of pages of our textbook, there was an illustration charting the spectrum of relationships between morality and the law. One end was marked as legalism, the belief that the law defined what it is moral. Oh, this is a mistake. One end was marked as legalism, the belief that the law defined what is moral. Let me fix that. I hope this is like a first printing. I think that's been fixed. That's pretty funny. Thaddeus Russell. Thad Russell just messaged me. What's that say? Just finished reading it finally, and I've been buying copies for friends and relatives. Nice try, Frank. You don't got any friends. Page 1 defined what is moral. And I have a Fordite pen here from Foothill Antiques, which you can find on Instagram. Okay, let's fix that. One end was marked as legalism, the belief that the law defined what is moral. The other end was labeled antinomianism, which was presented as the view that one's conscience is the arbiter of morality and that laws are of no moral relevance. I can't remember if it was the textbook or the professor, but our class discussion opened with, since no one believes in antinomianism, the answer is somewhere to the other side of the bar. If an ideology had a name, the odds were quite high that someone did, in fact, believe in it. Antinomianism in ethics is anarchism in a socio-political context, the belief that the imposition of authority is illegitimate. In one sense, anarchism is nothing more than a declaration that you do not speak for me. Everything else is just implementation. It is impossible to have a radical philosophy without at first sounding like a lunatic or a moron. One of the reasons for this is that most radical philosophies are lunacy, and the rest for the most part are moronic. To proclaim earnestly that this, the status quo, doesn't just need tweaks or massive changes, but a fundamental reorganization is an enormously high task to argue for. It's akin to discussing a friend and mentioning that he's very tall. One can perhaps push the envelope with an 8-foot tall friend, but to claim someone is, say, 20 feet tall or apple feet tall simply wouldn't make any sense. The listener would have no frame of reference to even approximate what was meant to be said. This is what a society without the state sounds like to most people, for they have taken the legitimacy of government for granted all of their lives. An alternative is incomprehensible. There are many common visceral arguments against anarchism. Anarchism is a bad idea because it would lead to a government. Anarchism would mean authoritarian warlords being in charge of the society. Anarchism is utopian. It hasn't worked anywhere on Earth, except when it has, in which case doesn't count, because a government exists somewhere and therefore made it work. Anarchism cannot work on a large scale, and anarchism cannot work on a small scale either, because those areas would immediately be invaded. Inherent in this argument is that governments are, by their nature, invasive and predatory, this being the anarchist view of the nature of government. There are already several countries on Earth that don't have a military, and yes, many rely on foreign governments to protect them against invasion. The argument is that these foreign governments are thereby the real government. But outsourcing the delivery of security is no different than outsourcing delivery of food. If the security insurers were the real governments, they would be the ones giving and not taking orders. Yet all this misses the broader point. Anarchism is not a location. Anarchism is a relationship, one in which none of the parties has authority over the other. Every nation is in an anarchist relationship with one another. If a Canadian kills an American in Mexico, there is some agreed-upon mechanism to adjudicate the situation without involving a higher authority, because there is no higher authority to invoke. The situation would be the same if one's citizenship were voluntary and is easy to switch as a cell phone. The situation would be the same if one's citizenship were voluntary and as easy to switch as a cell phone provider. Citizenship by geography is landline technology in a post-smartphone world. Citizenship by geography is landline technology in a post-smartphone world. At base level, all anarchism claims to do is to resolve one major problem in interpersonal relationships: the forceful interjection of the state. Curing cancer would make things a lot better for many people. Yes, there would be costs. Oncologists would be out of work, and cancer researchers would need new subjects to explore. An anarchist world would still have murderers and thieves and evil men and women. It simply wouldn't put them in a position to enforce their evil on everyone else via getting elected and decreeing the law. Hold on a second. Should probably turn my phone off, huh? 1 second. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. Now imagine when I was reading the New Right audiobook, and literally after every sentence, because the room was so dry, I had to pause and take a drink of water. That's what it was like. It was probably the most strenuous physical thing I ever had to do. What's that super chat say? I drew a rendition of Davis Rothbard using the aesthetic of your book. Plans are to do an entire portfolio of each reader/author in the near future. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, we're doing that also, but more power to you. I mean, I think that's absolutely terrific. Absolutely terrific. Well, that's very nice. Shithole money. I don't know what that is. There's Amanda. What does she say? Looks more comfortable than dry booth reading. Yeah, exactly. Very cool to be able to watch history in the making. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. I'd love to see you talk with Akira the Don, DJ and creator of Meaning Wave. He's featured Jordan Peterson, Alan Watts, Jocko, etc., and a Malice Wave would be awesome. Okay, that sounds plausible. Okay, let me get back to the book and we'll do the super test later. Thank you, Frank. Okay. Curing cancer does not mean or imply curing diabetes, but neither does it mean or imply that curing cancer is utopian or a goal that should not be sought. As Randolph Bourne put it over a century ago, war is the health of the state, but plunder and societal conflict are not far behind when it comes to the government. It's quite easy to stump statists by asking if they would consider anarchism if there was a system of taxes and state action in place without a police force. How would it work is beside the point. Whether this would be anarchism is the question. If government was a useful mechanism for adjudicating disputes, lawsuits would be as common and as easily resolved as returning an item to the store or quitting one's job. If government was an effective mechanism at solving or preventing crime, crime would be as minor a political issue as fashion is. Everyone needs to feel safe in their person, just as everyone needs clothing. Yet only one is a political issue year in and year out. So what is the alternative to the state? Private police or none at all? The original version of anarchism, in the left-wing European tradition, is opposed to domination by one person over another and advocates for a society based on mutual aid and complete equality. The more recent version, the right capitalists, define themselves by opposition to the state. The right anarchists think the left anarchists are naive and lack a fundamental understanding of economics. The left anarchists think the right anarchists aren't anarchists at all, but mere apologists for corporate control and predation. Anarchism has been both a vision of a peaceful, cooperative society and an ideology of revolutionary terror. Since the term itself, anarchism, is a negation, there's a great deal of disagreement on what the positive alternative would look like. The black flag comes in many colors. On November 11th, 1887, 4 men were hanged by the state of Illinois. They were accused of conspiring to murder because of their common bond in preaching their anarchist views, and they became martyrs for the cause. At the base of the monument erected in their memory are carved the last words of one of them, August Spies. The day will come, he had. This one is tough because I'm thinking of Albert Parsons, and they wouldn't let his wife and kids see him as he was being led to the gallows, and as he was talking mid-sentence, they killed him. So being the person who gets to kind of bring these guys to some public prominence years later is very moving for me. The day will come, he had proclaimed from the gallows, when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you strangle today. The Anarchist Handbook is an opportunity for all these many varied voices to speak for themselves from across the decades. These were human beings who saw things differently from their fellow men. They fought and they loved. They lived and they died. They disagreed on much, but they all shared one vision: freedom. Okay, whew. That was fun. What do we got here? Dear writer, I can't thank you enough for bringing Sheath underwear into my life. My balls are very happy. Also, my girlfriend thanks you and says like a push-up bra for my crotch. I love Sheath underwear. I'm wearing it right now. I'll prove it to you. See? And if you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off. And I love being able to support a company that A, supports me literally, but also is doing something innovative and producing a quality product and stands by myself and many other content producers, some of whom are good. And then there's people like Dave Smith. What's this next one? We play your streams at the Egg Harbor City Barbershop all the time. Thanks for your perspective. Egg Harbor. Sounds white. What do we got here? Daily Wire is planning a buddy cop movie called Malice Knows No Bounds. I loved that interview with Michael Knowles. I was blown away. To me, like when people are listening to each other and having an exchange of ideas, that's the ideal of political discourse, which is not politics and what. You do not speak for me, except when I buy your audiobook, in which case you would in fact be speaking for me. I would be speaking to you. Thank you for those pounds. Good luck in your horrible country. There's an internal meme page visible only to Google employees. If you could post any meme there, what would you post? There's a meme of Hitler, and it says, never let people stop you from achieving your dreams. I think that would be the one. And it's in that font, like a Nike ad. That would be the one I would post. You seem to support both the ideas of private property and not having systems forced on you. Aren't they fundamentally in opposition? Hey, I could recommend a book. Okay, let's get to it. Let's do the next one. Chapter, okay. Chapter 2, William Godwin, from Inquiry Concerning Political Justice and Its Influence on Morals and Happiness, 1793. Widely regarded as the first anarchist in modern times, the British William Godwin's Inquiry was one of the most influential political tracts of his era. His devastating critique of social contract theory holds just as true today. As Godwin demonstrates, the social contract is one of those ideas that would come off as incoherent and deranged if one heard them for the first time as an adult. It is allegedly an unwritten... This is another mistake. What is going on here? Who edited this garbage? I have a first printing. I think these have been fixed later, but if not, I'm also going to change. The beauty of publishing through Amazon, by the way, guys, I can change the cover and the content. So it says I live in Brooklyn, but that's going to change in a couple of weeks. So let me change this already. It is allegedly an unwritten contract that presumes both consent, despite none having. It is allegedly an unwritten contract that presumes both consent, despite none having been. Why can't I say this? It is allegedly an unwritten contract that presumes both consent, despite none having been given, even in the face of explicit lack of consent, and contains no specific terms, a key element of any contract. Though the social contract is often posited as the origin of a just government, no government in history has ever so much as pretended to have come about as the result of it. And now, William Godwin, as read by Arthur Herman. Okay. Let me see how he pronounces his name for the next one. I want to be, some of these guys had, okay, let's do the next one. Great. I don't want to show his phone number. Chapter 3, Max Stirner, from The Ego in His Own, 1844. Part of me wants to mispronounce Nietzsche on purpose, just to drive people crazy. Somewhat of a hipster precursor to Nietzsche, you probably haven't heard of him, Max Stirner's idiosyncratic book, Der Einzige und sein Agentum, was supposedly regarded as too crazy to bother censoring. Stirner died largely forgotten, with the only images left behind of him being a couple of drawings by Marx's comrade-in-arms, Frederick Engels. His unique, energetic text later inspired egoists and anarchists alike, though not Nietzsche, who apparently never read him. I fucked this up. Let's read it again. Who wrote this garbage? His unique, energetic text later inspired egoists and anarchists alike, though not Nietzsche, who apparently never read him, with the opening salvo of "All things are nothing to me" being a cry of proud rebellion. Stirner's reduction of purportedly morally binding concepts such as duty to mere spooks continues to resonate with anarchists today. And now, Max Stirner, as read by Ethan Suplee. Okay, let's do some chats. What do we got here? Ruben wardrobe idea now that you're an underwear model. Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden with the red jacket and glasses. We actually did a shot with some soap for the Sheath underwear ads to replicate that. So you're not far off. 2 questions. What audio editing tools do you use for audiobook? I don't know. I have help for that. And what do you think of Bronze Age Pervert? I have not read his book. And I, as someone who has seen every episode of Drag Race and Drag Race UK and Drag Race Down Under, and has a photo of Candy Darling in his kitchen where a woman belongs, his Twitter account was way too gay for me. Like, I like the gay culture, but like naked men 24/7, I don't understand it. Currently reading The Fountainhead. Awesome. Okay, let's do the next one. Man, there's a lot of... Good for Ethan. This is long. Who read this one? Okay. Chapter 4. Pierre Joseph Perdon, from The Confessions of a Revolutionist. From The Confessions of a Revolutionist, 1850. Perdon can be regarded as the first modern intellectual to refer to himself as an anarchist, and he's the source for much of what followed philosophically. It was he who coined the expression properties theft. Perdon's brand of anarchism he chose to call mutualism, which was regarded as a composite of sorts between anarchism and socialism. He would argue for a revolution that resulted in a social society where everyone worked voluntarily to the benefit of all. And now, Pierre Joseph Perdon, as read by Tim Poole. Chapter 5. Herbert Spencer, from Social Statics, 1851. Though largely forgotten today, Herbert Spencer was one of the preeminent British intellectuals of the latter half of the 19th century. It was he, and not Darwin, who coined the term survival of the fittest, by which he meant that in any environment the fittest will survive, not necessarily that they should. Decades later, Murray Rothbard reportedly called Social Statics the greatest single work of libertarian political philosophy ever written. Yet Spencer was no anarchist, and had the following chapter quietly removed from Social Statics when it was republished years later. Anarchists later found the excised chapter and republished it far and wide after his death. And now, Herbert Spencer, as read by Chris Williamson. I'm going to go back for there's one sentence in the Max Stirner that I want to change. His unique, energetic text later inspired egoists and anarchists alike, though not Nietzsche, who apparently never read him, with the opening salvo of, "All things are nothing to me," being a cry of proud rebellion. Okay. Let's go chapter 6. Okay, I got to look up how he pronounces his name. Turn this off. Let's do some chat. Bronze Age Pervert is eccentric, but you should check out one of his podcasts, early ones on YouTube. He's surprisingly interesting, somewhat Yarvin-like. I don't think I listen to literally any podcasts. I get antsy just sitting there and not being able to respond and engage. One second. Let me get this guy's pronunciation. I hope you guys are enjoying the reveal, because this was a lot of fun for me. Okay. Anarchy means malice with dental dam is forced to throat me. Cool. What's the next one? Watched an interview debate with Sam Cedar and Dave Smith and another with Sam and Yaron Brook. Do you have any opinion of Cedar? I don't. I'm not familiar with his. I know the name, but I've never seen any of his content. If Dave is on the show, he must be a legit dude to some extent. Tim Pool for the Mutualist. Your voice selections are on point. I liked it because it was Memoirs of a Revolutionist. So like Tim Pool being the revolutionist, I thought that was pretty funny. Gavin McIngus on your welcome. Probably not. Are there any essays that almost made the book but you had to cut? Yes, I didn't include War is the Health of the State by Randolph Bourne because he's not an anarchist. So that was one. That was probably the only one. I also was going to do You Hate the State by Murray Rothbard, but I got Anatomy of the State in its entirety, which is much better. Okay, let me do the next one. Chapter 6, Josiah Warren from True Civilization, An Immediate Necessity and the Last Ground of Hope for Mankind, 1863. America in the 19th century was a truly odd place, with many varied social experiments occurring throughout the vast, quickly growing nation. Among them was Josiah Warren's utopian community, Modern Times, on New York's Long Island. Warren took the labor theory of value seriously and advocated for an economics under his slogan of cost the limit of price. He decreed the price of an item should not be set by the market, but by how much work went into producing it, and even issued currency based on hours worked to his followers. As America was ripping itself in half, brother slaughtering brother in the Civil War, Warren was denouncing the state's authority in his book, True Civilization. And now, Josiah Warren, as read by David Petrusha. Okay, what do we got here? I finally got some Sheath Thunder from my husband and used code Malice20. It's the best. Thank you for the work you do. It'd be interesting to have Michael Humer on the podcast sometime. Oh, yeah, he's great. But I stay away from libertarians. I apologize. I was poking for snark. Okay. I do own your book. There are conflicting essays on private properties. What is your position? I like them all. I'm comfortable with whatever people want to choose to do voluntarily. And now Sam Hyde reading Louis Ling. He finally did not get away with it. Well, neither did Louis, right? Yeah. Do you have any plans for a sequel to Dear Reader? Absolutely. Oh, well, The White Pill in many ways is a sequel conceptually. I couldn't have written The White Pill without Dear Reader, I don't think. Who's reading this one? Okay. Let me do the next one. Chapter 7, Mikhail Bakunin from The State and Marxism, 1867, and God in the State, 1870. Contemporary right anarchists frequently proclaim that left anarchists are secret authoritarians, statists at heart. Historically, however, Marx's foremost ideological rival was Mikhail Bakunin. At the time, there was an enormous debate on the left as to whether communism should... There's a typo here, too. This is terrible. Should be achieved. I fixed a bunch of these in later printing, so I don't know if they're still screwed up. Historically, however, Marx's foremost ideological rival was Mikhail Bakunin. At the time, there was an enormous debate on the left as to whether communism should be achieved through the state, the Marxist position, or Bakunin's view that anarchism was the way. 50 years before the Soviet Union was founded, Bakunin was anticipating and denouncing what the theory of Marxism would mean in practice. And now, Mikhail Bakunin, as read by Ben Domenech. This is long. Good work, Ben. Chapter 8. Lysandre Spooner. No Treason, Number 4. The Constitution of No Authority, 1870. Abolitionist and attorney Lysandre Spooner's essay No Treason consisted of 3 parts. It is the third part. I screwed this up. It's number... Can we look... Hold on. I screwed this up. I know I fixed it in later printings. Frank, can you look up if No Treason is numbers 4 or number 6, Constitution of No Authority? Number 6. It is 6. Okay, thank you. Lysandre Spooner, No Treason, number 6, The Constitution of No Authority. Abolitionist and attorney Lysandre Spooner's essay No Treason consisted of 3 parts. It is the third part, oddly numbered as 6, that holds the most sway today. The Constitution is like a no-gun zone sign for... The Constitution is like a no-gun... English is my second language, okay? Just cut me some slack. I'm trying my best. All these R's have to be backwards in my Russian brain. The Constitution is like a no-gun zone sign for conservatives, in that the only people who would bind are those who are already generally honest and peaceable. The ones who would lie or commit harm would simply look at the piece of paper and scoff. With unrelenting logic, Spooner dissects the sanctity of the Constitution and demonstrates that it cannot be said to have moral authority over anyone. And now, Lysandre Spooner, as read by Camille Foster. That one I was really happy about. It took a long time. He's so busy, but have someone like a African, he's Jamaican American, to read Lysandre. I knew Lysandre would be really, really proud. So I really fought for that one. I'm really glad that happened. Want to thank you for what you do. I quit smoking, and Fume is one of my. Fume has greatly helped with that. Also started going to the gym, eating better because of you. When I'm doing my ads and I'm saying that this is something that's a good thing, I'm not getting like the Fume ads. I improv them because I believe it. And Sheath, I wear it every day. I paid for this chat instead of taxes. Hell yeah. What's that? Euros? Okay, thank you, Dana. I recognize that name. Euros. Is there a story behind how you ended up on Cash Cab? Yes. Go to Michael Malice Cash Cab Thought Catalog, and it's all written up there. Is there an errata list? Nope. Because when you print through CreateSpace, you can have dynamic editing. So if I edit, the books going forward from that point will be fixed. The first printings, you'll know they're first printings because in the on the copyright page, it'll say copyright John Has Mass. I misspelled his name, but that was like the first 2 days only. Who's reading this one? Oh yeah, this is great. Chapter 9, Johann Most from The Science of Revolutionary Warfare, a little handbook of instruction in the use and preparation of nitroglycerin, dynamite, gun cannon, fulminating mercury, bombs, fuses, poisons, etc., from 1883. German-born anarchist Johann Most was the primary proponent of achieving a free anarchist society through violent revolution. The term anarchist is largely synonymous with terrorist in the United Kingdom, and is due to Most that this came to be. He popularized the concept and term of the propaganda of the deed, meaning using assassination or bombs as a means of advocating one's political position. Almost a century before the publication of Explosive Manual, the Anarchist Cookbook, the translation of Most, The Science of Revolutionary Warfare became an enormous free speech concern. His work was nothing less than a clear manual for the everyday revolutionary on how to build dynamite and other explosives. Here is the introduction to Most's provocative work. And now, Johann Most, as read by Curtis Yarvin. Okay, this is Louis Ling. But I'm going to read the chapter at the end, the Louis Ling one. But I'm going to read the intro. Chapter 10, Louis Ling from Famous Speeches of Our Martyrs Delivered in Court, when asked if they had anything to say why sentence of death should not be passed upon them, October 7th, 8th, and 9th, 1886. On May 4th, 1886, a still unknown person threw a bomb at a labor demonstration in Chicago's Haymarket Square. In the ensuing chaos, dozens were injured and several killed, including 7 police officers. As a result of this, 8 anarchists were arrested in connection as part of a conspiracy, even though most of them hadn't actually been there at the time. 4 of the men would later be hanged for the events, 2 sentenced to life, and 1 to 15 years. Bombs were found in the 8th man's, Louis Ling's, home, for which his attorney's weak excuse was that Ling had the right to have bombs in his house. Through the ages, this has become popularized as Ling supposedly proclaiming, "I couldn't have thrown that bomb. I was at home making bombs." Ling could be regarded as the mythical Che Guevara figure of his day, with his outraged defiance of the court inspiring an entire generation of young revolutionaries. Rather than hanging, Ling smuggled a blasting cap into his prison and blew off his own jaw, writing "Hooray for Anarchy" on the wall in German with his own blood before dying. All the Haymarket martyrs were posthumously pardoned, and a monument later raised in their honor. And now, Louis Ling, as read by myself. Okay. Let's do the next one. We're halfway there, people. Have you ever considered writing fiction to explain your ideas? Yes, but not to explain my ideas. I had an extremely vivid dream about Sheath underwear, as quite perturbed. What is this sorcery, Malice? I know what to do. How did you get them unstuck? Chapter 11, Benjamin R. Tucker, State Socialism and Anarchism, How Far They Agree and Wherein They Differ, 1888. Individualist anarchist and publisher Benjamin R. Tucker was one of the most important radicals in American history. His long-running periodical Liberty was home to essays from anarchists and socialists of all stripes, at a time where socialism did not necessarily have the contemporary meaning of government control. In the same way that there are many answers as to what anarchism would look like in practice, socialism, too, had numerous variants. Here, Tucker tries to define and contrast the two concepts. And now, Benjamin R. Tucker, as read by Dave Rubin. Next time you're on Timcast, can you please explain how capitalism is not a zero-sum game? No. Okay. Chapter 12, Peter Kerpotkin from The Conquest of Bread, 1892. No one has done as much to flesh out what anarcho-communism would look like in practice as Peter Kerpotkin. Kerpotkin regarded anarchism as the evolved alternative to the might makes right social Darwinist worldview, and his quote is saying, "Competition is the law of the jungle, but cooperation is the law of civilization." He envisioned a peaceful society where everybody would work. He envisioned a peaceful society where everyone would work to the benefit of all, where kindness and compassion motivated humanity. Despite claims that he was utterly naive, it is violence that is by far the exception in interpersonal human interaction. Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread remains the classic text elucidating the Ancon perspective. Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread remains the classic text elucidating the Ancon perspective. And now, Peter Kropotkin, as read by Yeonmi Park. Who's reading this one? Okay. Chapter 13, Leo Tolstoy from The Slavery of Our Times. Chapter 13, Leo Tolstoy from The Slavery of Our Times, 1900. Tolstoy is universally regarded as one of the great novelists of all time, with both War and Peace and Anna Karenina still held up as masterpieces of fiction. Few are aware that he was also an explicit committed anarchist. In his nonfiction, Tolstoy set out to explain how a stateless society is superior, as well as possible mechanisms to transition to such a preferable form of human organization. And now, Leo Tolstoy, as read by Buck Sexton. I'm going to do one more, then we'll do the chats. Chapter 14, Alexander Berkman, Prisons and Crime, 1906. Inspired by his mentor Johann Most, Alexander Berkman decided to take matters into his own hands and engage in an attentat, assassination, of Andrew Carnegie's lieutenant, Henry Clay Frick, in 1892. Frick was overseeing the Homestead strike in Pennsylvania, and matters had already turned deadly. Berkman failed to kill Frick, and his actions were disavowed by Most. He ended up serving over a decade in prison, eventually penning Prison Memoirs of an Anarchist. How to deal with criminals is one of the biggest questions people have of the anarchist perspective. Here, Berkman gives one possible anarchist framework with which to study the issue. And now, Alexander Berkman, as read by Maj Touré. Okay, what do we got? Have you seen Jose Gallison's discussions on Anarchist Handbook? I have not. What's next? You should consider right now inscribing the book in your hand as a live recording book and put it for auction at a later date. That's not a bad idea. I can use it to raise money for charity. That's a really good idea. Shout out to Frank for keeping things together. Do not address the staff. What is the military's role in anarchist society? Read the book. Will you go on David Pakman's show sometime, please? Talk to some leftists. I don't know who he is, but if he has got a big enough audience, I would be happy to do it, probably. Congrats to the new town, new house, and girlfriend. Here's the housewarming. Oh, Kelly, that's really, really sweet. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I'm signing the lease later today. Great episode, Molebug, but can you... Let's do the next one. Holy hell, what an accomplishment to assemble such a lineup for this audiobook. I'm really proud of myself. I'm not going to lie. I really wanted this to be one for the ages. Okay. And the next one is one I'm really proud of. Chapter 15, Voltaire de Cleyre, Anarchism and American Traditions, 1909. More popular with the unwashed masses than with true blue Americans, in the 19th and early 20th century, the anarchist idea was often caricatured as an invasive foreign ideology. Voltaire de Cleyre took pains to explain that anarchism and hatred of the state is in fact far more American and had far more of a tradition on American soil than most ideas that were being bandied about in her time. In 1765, over a decade before the Declaration of Independence, Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death, stood up in the Virginia House of Burgesses and basically said that King George was asking to be shot and concluded with, if this be treason, make the most of it. Here de Cleyre makes the case that anarchism is more American than foreign dessert, apple pie. And now, Voltaire de Cleyre, as read by Adrian Curry. Chapter 16, Emma Goldman from Anarchism and Other Essays, 1910. If anarchism believed in rulers, then Emma Goldman would be the undisputed queen. The tiny woman took on the federal and state governments throughout most of her life, eventually challenging Woodrow Wilson and his Great War, and getting deported for her radical views by young J. Edgar Hoover. Once in the Soviet Union, she lost very little time telling Lenin to his face what he was doing wrong. At various times, the most hated woman in America and the face of assassination, read Emma's provocative life and ideas, still radicalize people today. And now, Emma Goldman, as read by Michaela Peterson. The next one. Oh, this one I'm really proud of. I'm really proud of this one. Chapter 17, Charles Robert Plunkett, Dynamite, 1914. Emma Goldman's anarchist periodical Mother Earth was a clearinghouse for many prominent names in leftist circles. In 1914, one issue was released without her supervision while she had been away on a lecture tour. Though Goldman was more bloodthirsty than her mentor Johann Most or her partner Alexander Berkman, even he thought the McKinley assassination was pointless and a shame. She still knew enough to be careful as to where and when to discuss political violence. As Goldman later wrote, I had tried always to keep our magazine free from such language, and now the whole number was filled with prattle about force and dynamite. I was so furious that I wanted the entire issue thrown into the fire, but it was too late. The magazine had gone out to the subscribers. Here is the anarchist essay that so disquieted even Emma Goldman. And now, Charles Robert Plunkett, as read by Lauren Chen. So for this one, why I wanted Lauren Chen, I wanted it to have a sound of the seduction of violence, which is really part of the anarchist tradition. So I wanted someone to have, instead of a guy, like a woman's like siren song calling for murder. Because that is very much something that is part of the anarchist tradition. Okay, what's next? What do we got here? Do you think it's fair if I count this book as 22 books read for my good year's yearly challenge? No, it's barely a book at all. Got your COVID positive shirt and wore it while playing a show. Hell yeah. If you go to maliceshirts.com, you can see it there. My brother saw a picture and told me he can't associate with it anymore. Don't you mean your sister? Worth it. Love the book. Congrats on the success. Well, thank you very much. Is that 1,200 people here? I'm blind. Yeah, okay, cool. Will it be a white pill if the Anarchist Handbook is more commercially successful than the white pill? I don't think that's a possibility when you see what I've got next. But no, I don't think it'd be either. Would you have martyr made Daryl Cooper on your welcome? He seems to be an anarchist rabbit hole lately. Possibly. I've got like the next 6 people slotted. Vet here, audiobook date. Are you insane? What do you think we're doing? Are you literally insane? What's the next one? Hey, Big Mike, next time you have Curtis Jarwin, can you go longer? No. He was rushing. He barely had time to do the hour. Okay, let's do the next one. Chapter 18, Morris and Linda Tannehill from The Market for Liberty, 1970. Though they never used the word anarchism, the Tannehill's book was the first to lay out what a competitive market for policing would look like. What had been a completely fringe concept at the time has become a commonplace position on many pockets of the... That's what the super chats do. What has been a completely fringe concept at the time has become a commonplace position on many pockets of the internet, though still far from mainstream. Here, they lay out the question of what one school of anarchism would do in lieu of a government monopoly on policing. And now, Morris and Linda Tannehill, as read by Bridget Fedesi. Okay, we're almost done. Chapter 19, David Friedman from The Machinery of Freedom, 1973, 2014. Economist David Friedman comes to narco-capitalism from a largely utilitarian perspective, as opposed to the natural rights perspective preferred by most ANCAPs. His The Machinery of Freedom is a collection of essays that includes attempts to resolve issues that make people squirmy about fully hoisting the black flag. Here, he addresses two very common critiques of the ideology: that anarchism is inherently unstable and will resolve itself to a state anyway, and that an anarchist society would be incapable of defending itself from an aggressive foreign government. And now, Dave Friedman, as read by Dave Smith. One second. It's okay, it's just too hard. Give up like Lewis. Truer words have never been spoken. Never been spoken. Okay, let's do the next one. Chapter 20, Murray Rothbard, Anatomy of the State, 1974. Murray Rothbard is popularly regarded as the godfather of anarcho-capitalism. Throughout his long career, the economist, philosopher, and historian covered an enormous swath of issues from the perspective of individual rights. His article, Anatomy of the State, is commonly cited as the one which makes readers take a radically different perspective on the nature of the state from what they had been taught in school, and makes them realize just how malevolent government really is. And now, Murray Rothbard is read by Tom Woods. Let's do the last one. We're almost done. Oh, no, there's two more. Chapter 21, John Hasnas, The Myth of the Rule of Law, 1995. It is taken as a given that a society without an objective monopoly of law and the state is the definition of chaos. Georgetown University law professor John Hasnas demonstrates that what is going on? I need more soda. Georgetown University law professor John Hasnas demonstrates that it's the precise opposite. I feel like Lewis, but I'm not reading Tolstoy. I'm reading my own work. What's going on here? Take 7. Georgetown University law professor John Hasnas demonstrates that is the precise opposite that is true, namely, that objective law is both an incoherent concept and a utopian fantasy impossible to put into practice. For those minarchists holding on to their ideal of the smallest state possible, here is the anarchist rebuttal. And now, John Hasnas, as read by attorney Ron Coleman. Oh, I got plenty here. Thank you, though. Okay. We got one more. And then I got to do Louis Ling. Chapter 22, Michael Malice, Why I Won't Vote... Someone needs to do a supercut of me being illiterate and send it to Lewis. Chapter 22, Michael Malice, Why I Won't Vote This Year or Any Year, 2014. Michael Malice is the author of Dear Reader, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il, and The New Right. He is also the organizer of the forthcoming The Anarchist Handbook, currently scheduled for release sometime last year. Malice is notorious for writing about himself in such a way as to confuse and annoy the reader for no discernible purpose whatsoever. And now, Michael Malice, as read by Lex Friedman. That was really fun, getting Lex to read me. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I reading myself? I should have somebody else do it. Okay, let's do the chats, and I'll do Louis Ling. Thank you, Kyle. Did you get a puppy yet? No. The missus has a puppy. Can't believe you got some nobody to read Rothbard. Well, Rothbard's a nobody. He's a very failed philosopher. No one's heard of him. No one's. I'm the one. He owes his name to me. Okay. Are we caught up? Yes. Okay. I'm gonna do Louis Ling now. I'm gonna do the seething version, and then I'm gonna do the. I've been sweating so shiny all the time. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna do the seething version, and then I'm going to do the foaming at the mouth version, and then people on my locals can pick which one they like better. I'm starving. I've had lunch. Where is this? Where is this lunacy? Chapter Ling 135. Okay. So this is going to be what? How many pages? 4 pages. Okay, I'm doing this. This is going to be tough. So this is going to be the ice cold version. Court of Justice, with the same irony with which you have regarded my efforts to win in this free land of America a likelihood such as humankind is worthy to enjoy, do you now, after condemning me to death, concede me the liberty of making a final speech? I accept your concession, but it is only for the purpose of exposing the injustice, the calumnies, and the outrages which have been heaped upon me. You have accused me of murder and convicted me. What proof have you brought that I'm guilty? In the first place, you've brought this fellow Seliger to testify against me. Him I have helped to make bombs, and you have further proven that with the assistance of another, I took those bombs to number 58 Clybourne Avenue. But what you have not proven, even with the assistance of your bought squealer Seliger, who would appear to have acted such a prominent part in the affair, is that any of those bombs were taken to the Haymarket. A couple of chemists also have been brought here as specialists, yet they could only state that the metal of which the Haymarket bomb was made bore a certain resemblance to those bombs of mine, and your Mr. Ingham has vainly endeavored to deny that the bombs were quite different. He had to admit that there was a difference of a full half-inch in their diameters, though he suppressed the fact that there was also a difference of a quarter of an inch in the thickness of the shell. This is the kind of evidence upon which you have convicted me. It is not murder, however, of which you have convicted me. The judge has stated that much only this morning in his resume of the case, and Grinnell has repeatedly asserted that we are being tried not for murder but for anarchy. So the condemnation is that I'm an anarchist. What is anarchy? This is a subject which my comrades have explained with sufficient clearness, and it's unnecessary for me to go over it again. They have told you plainly enough what our aims are. The state's attorney, however, has not given you that information. He has merely criticized and condemned not the doctrines of anarchy, but our methods of giving them practical effect. And even here, he has maintained a discreet silence as to the fact that those methods were forced upon us by the brutality of the police. Grinnell's own proffered remedy for our grievances is the ballot and combination of trade Grinnell's own proffered remedy for the... God damn it. I can see why he's for violence. Grinnell's own proffered remedy for our grievances is the ballot and combination of trade unions, and Ingham has even avowed the desirability of a 6-hour movement. But the fact is that at every attempt to wield a ballot, at every endeavor to combine the efforts of working men, you have displayed the brutal force of the police club, and this is why I have recommended rude force to combat the ruder force of the police. You have charged me with despising law and order. What does your law and order amount to? Its representatives are the police, and they have thieves in their ranks. Here sits Captain Shock. He has himself admitted to me that my hat and books have been stolen from him in his office, stolen by policemen. These are your defenders of property rights? These are your defenders of property rights. It's not a question, it's an exclamation point. The detectives, again, who arrested me, forced their way into my room like housebreakers under false pretenses, giving the name of a carpenter, Lorenz, of Burlington Street. They have sworn that I was alone in my room, therein perjuring themselves. You have not subpoenaed this lady, Mrs. Klein, who was present, and could have sworn that the aforesaid detectives broke into my room under false pretenses, and that their testimonies are perjured. But let us go further. In Shock, we have a captain of the police, and he also has perjured himself. He has sworn that I admitted to him being present at the Monday night meeting, whereas I distinctly informed him that I was at a carpenter's meeting at Zepp's Hall. He has sworn again that I told him that I also learned to make bombs from Ermos' book. That also is a perjury. Let us go still a step higher among these representatives of law and order. Grinnell and his associates have permitted perjury, and I say that they have done it knowingly. The proof has been adduced by my counsel, and with my own eyes I have seen Grinnell point out to Gilmer, 8 days before he came upon the stand, the persons of the men whom he was to swear against. While I, as I've stated above, believe in force for the sake of winning for myself and fellow workmen a livelihood, such as men ought to have, Grinnell, on the other hand, through his police and other rogues, has suborned perjury in order to murder 7 men, of whom I'm one. Grinnell had the pitiful courage here in the courtroom, where I could not defend myself, to call me a coward. The scoundrel! A fellow who has leagued himself with a parcel of base hireling knaves to bring me to the gallows. Why? For no earthly reason save a contemptible selfishness, a desire to rise in the world, to make money, forsooth. This wretch, who, by means of the perjuries of other wretches, is going to murder 7 men, is the fellow who calls me coward. And yet you blame me for despising such defenders of the law, such unspeakable hypocrites. Anarchy means no domination or authority of one man over another, yet you call that disorder. A system which advocates no such order as shall require the services of rogues and thieves to defend it, you call disorder. The judge himself has been forced to admit that the state's attorney had not been able to connect me with the bomb throwing. The latter knows how to get around it, however. He charges me with being a conspirator. How does he prove it? Simply by declaring the International Working People's Association to be a conspiracy. I was a member of that body, so he has the charge securely fastened on me. Excellent! Nothing's too difficult for the genius of a state's attorney. It is hardly incumbent upon me to review the relations which I occupy to my companions in misfortune. I can say truly and openly that I am not as intimate with my fellow prisoners as I am with Captain Shock. The universal misery, the ravages of the capitalistic hyena have brought us together in our agitation, not as persons, but as workers in the same cause. Such is the conspiracy of which you have convicted me. I protest against the conviction, against the decision of the court. I do not recognize your law, jumbled together as it is by the nobodies of bygone centuries, and I do not recognize the decision of the court. My own counsel have conclusively proven from the decisions of equally high courts that a new trial must be granted us. The state's attorney quotes 3 times as many decisions from perhaps still higher courts to prove the opposite, and I'm convinced if, in another trial, these decisions should be supported by 21 volumes, they will adduce 100 in support of the contrary if it is anarchists who are to be tried. And not even under such a law that a schoolboy must despise, not even by such methods have they been able to legally convict us. They have suborned perjury to boot. I tell you frankly and openly, I am for force. I have already told Captain Shock, if they use cannons against us, we shall use dynamite against them. I repeat, I am the enemy of the order of today, and I repeat that, with all my powers, so long as breath remains in me, I shall combat it. I declare again, frankly and openly, that I'm in favor of using force. I have told Captain Shock, and I stand by it, if you cannonade us, we shall dynamite you. You laugh. Perhaps you think you'll throw no more bombs. But let me assure you that I die happy on the gallows. So confident am I that the hundreds and thousands to whom I've spoken will remember my... It's kind of hard reading, knowing someone's about to die, and this is last, you know what I mean? Ugh, when you get into the emotion of it, it really rattles you. Perhaps you, but let me assure you that I die happy on the gallows. So confident am I that the hundreds and thousands to whom I've spoken will remember my words. And when you shall have hanged us, then, mark my words, they will do the bomb throwing. In this hope do I say to you, I despise you. I despise your order, your laws, your force-propped authority. Hang me for it. You know, I'm not going to do 2 takes. I think that's the way to do it. Like, it's just common at the end. He just loses his shit a little. Whew. That's intense stuff. Okay, let's do a little more super chats, then we'll be done with this. Hey, Michael, I'd love to hear you talk about Hitchens when you can. I don't have much to say about him. Not well read about him, but certainly he was a pathbreaker for what I do. I tried reading Hitch 22. I couldn't get through it. I stopped. Am I the only reader who's watching this, much less paying for super chat? Yes, probably. If Clinton was the first black president, would that mean Obama was the first female president, or is it Biden? No, the first female president was James Buchanan. And Woodrow Wilson would be number 2. I love watching you win at life. I get to see the ongoing continuation of ego and hubris in the book's hero winning in the end. He's an anti-hero at best. Thank you for that, Michael. Wow, holy crap, dude. Jesus, very generous of you. Ling would have been a Sheath model, hunk level 1,000. Captain Shock, who he refers to in his essay, wrote a book called Anarchism, an Anarchist. And in his book, using these words, he talks about the people who went to the jail to see Louis Ling's physique. It was really kind of... I'm so glad I kind of brought this guy to prominence. He's such a fascinating figure. Are you familiar with Graham Hancock? I am not. Is that the last one? Okay, guys. Unless there's anything, other chats in the next minute, I'm going to sign off. Next week on You're Welcome, we have Arthur Herman. And then I believe it's Dave Smith. And then we have Ms. Blair White, who we already recorded, who is also moving to Austin. So that is going to be a lot of fun. This might be my last time in the studio, possibly. Anyway, thank you all for the support. I am Lex. I will now read 100111100. The only one I'm waiting on is Ben Domenech. So he has to finish his. And when that's done, we will drop everything's also has been mastered. So when that happens, we will drop it on Audible, on Amazon, and all of the such good places. I am really, what's this say? Guten Shabbos. Keep up. What? Oh, he's from Sweden. Guten Shabbos. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Big question, big fan random question. You have a favorite film? American Beauty is certainly up there. Amelie is up there. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is up there. Bad Santa is probably my favorite comedy. That's a good short list off the top of my Fight Club. I think that's a good short list. The Incredibles. That might be a good list off the top of my head. I don't know. The favorite, of course, changed at the moment. I'm not a big movie person. It just the time commitment and so on and so forth. Most movies are so terrible. Okay, I am going to bounce. Thank you to Frank for being so patient and professional. This will be out very soon. We got one last one. My school let people inside without a mask over the summer, and now before the school year starts, they change the rules. These people are monsters. Well, I don't think that's an example of monsterism, but I hear what you're saying. Do what you can to pass. It's going to be tough in the short term, but it's going to be better in the medium and long. I am going to get lunch. I haven't had lunch because I had to record Part of the Problem today, which was a great episode. Dave and I were talking about the whole Beltway Libertarian crowd, and we went pretty ham on that. So, okay, thank you all for the support. I'll see you all on malice.locals.com, and you are welcome.